Welcome back, everyone. I'm Robert Nuddleman, employment attorney, mediator, and public speaker. Last time we were talking about setting boundaries. This time we're going to dive a little bit deeper and talk about a four-step process for being clear about those boundaries. So grab your cup of coffee. Let's get started. I heard it once said that an unarticulated expectation is disappointment guaranteed. And I find that true in so many different areas. I work with a lot of organizations and individuals about expectation management and setting clear goals. Oftentimes I'll get a call from somebody that has an employee that's not performing up to expectations. And sometimes that employee had previously performed well, but now they're not. Or maybe they're a newer employee that isn't aware of what their role is or is not performing up to the level that we need. So I talk a lot about using a four-step process to make sure that our expectations and their understanding of our expectations are the same. Think about it. If I expect you to perform in a particular way, but I've never told you specifically what that means, how are you going to be able to perform at the level I expect? There's also a tendency to use jargon or non-specific language about what my expectations are, about what I want. I want you to be more productive. You need to be more professional. Your communication's not good. The way you acted was inappropriate. All those things may be true. They're also valuative. They are conclusions. They are not specific actions or conduct. So I'd really like to dive down and focus on what is the specific conduct that we're trying to address. And this applies whether somebody is not performing well or maybe they've engaged in conduct they shouldn't. And the four-step process is pretty simple. First and foremost, we're going to identify what the behavior is. What is it that the employee or person, relationship partner, whoever it is, did or did not do that we want to change? Second is, what do we expect or what do we want to see in the future? Three, we want to get some sort of buy-in from the person to ensure that they agree that they're going to at least work towards, if not meet, the standards that we set. And four, we're going to identify what the consequences are going to be if the person doesn't meet those. So let's take this in the context of an employee who got into an argument with another coworker. One option would be, hey, that was not acceptable. You can't do that. Okay, that could be clear, but the, "Hey, you did this and you can't do that" is not very specific. So I'd wanna be more specific. In that meeting you had with Joe the other day, you raised your voice and you stood up and banged the counter. That's not acceptable conduct. In the future, when you're having a conversation, you need to keep a level voice and avoid banging on the table. Can you do that? Because if you can't, then we're gonna have to make some changes. I just went through all four steps, being very specific about the conduct so that the person knows exactly what I'm saying. If I had approached that with, you were being inappropriate, there's room for argument there. There's room for, no, I didn't. I wasn't doing X, Y, or Z. By being specific about the conduct and saying, you were raising your voice and you banged on the table, I'm being specific about the behavior. Let's talk about another employment situation where an employee is habitually late. You might approach the person and say, Alice, you arrived to work today at 9:15. Start time is at 9 o'clock. It's really important that you be here at 9 o'clock. Can you do that? Because if you can't, then I'm going to have to start issuing warnings, and that could impact your ability to continue working here. Again, being very specific. I'm not saying you're habitually late. I'm being specific. You arrived today at 9:15. Start time is at 9 o'clock. Can you be here at 9 o'clock? If we do this in a relationship situation, let's say your significant other likes to be distracted when they're driving. They're drinking their coffee, they're texting on the phone, all while driving in the car, and this annoys you. One way to approach that would be to say, you're not paying attention. You need to stop doing that. Okay, accurate. but the not paying attention is pretty general. If instead you said, you're talking on your cell phone when you're driving, and that scares me. Now you're being very specific about what they're doing. When I'm in the car, and even when I'm not in the car, but at least when I'm in the car, I need you to not be on your phone. You're telling them what you want them to do. Will you do that? Get their buy-in. If the person says, no, I'm not going to do it, we're going to address that in a moment. Okay, because next time that that's going to happen, I'm going to ask you to stop, pull over, and call me an Uber because I really don't feel safe. Now we're setting very clear boundaries on what's going to happen if the person does it again. Now, of course, we're going to have to enforce those boundaries, right? We're not going to say a consequence will happen without being ready to and willing to implement that consequence. Performance improvement plans is a good example of using that four-step process, because what we're doing is we're identifying the specific things the person did wrong or did not do that we want them to do, telling them what we want to do in the future, getting their buy-in, even if their buy-in is, yes, I'm going to try, and then telling them what's going to happen if they don't. Now, what happens if we get somebody who doesn't want to buy? Let's say, no, I'm not going to be able to do that. I can't do that. We have to be prepared for that. A couple of things. One, let's check our expectations. Am I expecting too much? I'm asking this person to be here at 9:00. That's what time we start. Okay, that's pretty reasonable. We need people answering the phones or at their desks, whatever it is at 9:00. I think a good question to ask is, why can't you show up? Well, maybe you find out that the person car currently is in the shop or it's broken or they don't have a vehicle and they're relying on public transportation and the bus doesn't arrive until 9:00. And then they have to walk 15 minutes. And the only earlier bus is going to get them there at 8:00. Well, maybe we need to adjust our expectations. Maybe based on that information, we can say, okay, can we agree that you'll be here by 9:20? And if you're going to be late, you're going to give me a call or send me a text message. Again, we're being very clear on what our expectations are. If we can reach a consensus that the person will work towards or accomplish or meet our goals, then we have the same expectations. My expectations and their expectations are the same. Again, if they don't meet those expectations, we shouldn't ignore that. It is something we need to address. We don't have to address it out of anger or frustration. We can just say, remember we had that discussion 3 weeks ago where we agreed you were going to be in by 9:20, and if you couldn't, you would call me. Today you arrived at 9:30. You didn't call. I've got to issue you a written warning because we said that there were going to be consequences or whatever is that step that we want to take. In the distracted driver example I provided, one of the consequences I said was, I'm going to get out of the car and I'm going to call an Uber. Is that really realistic? Maybe the consequence is something that's a little bit more realistic. I'm going to be the one driving next time. That may or may not be a good thing if you've seen my driving, but it could be a possible consequence. Or I'm going to take the phone, I'm going to put it in my pocket so that we take that phone and that distraction away from the person. So we've been clear on what our expectations are. We've identified what the behavior is. We've been clear on what our expectations are, what the goal is. We've gotten their buy-in, and we've identified what the consequences are going to be. Now let's put that into action. Again, monitor the work that's going on. We've set those clear expectations. If it's happened more than once, typically in the employment context, I recommend putting something in writing. I do believe progressive discipline is a good thing. Progressive discipline or progressive corrective action means that if you do something that is unexpected, I'm going to have the conversation with you. If it happens again, I'm going to raise the consequences. Maybe it's a verbal warning, then a written warning, then maybe a suspension, performance improvement plan, termination. Of course, all that depends on what the conduct is. If you engage in a violent outburst at work, the consequence may be your employment's going to end, or maybe this won't happen again. If it happens again, you will be fired. It's going to depend on the severity of the situation and the context in which it is. By providing clear expectations, clearly identifying what they've done, what you'd like them to do, what's going to happen if they don't, and getting their buy-in, you are paving the road for establishing good communication, good boundaries, and it gives you the framework to take the next step if you have to. Hopefully, you won't have to. Hopefully, the guidance you're providing them is going to be enough to enable them to perform the way you want to perform. Again, you can use the same four-step process, whether it's at home, whether it's with your students, whether it's with friends, anything that's important to you where you're trying to effectuate change through good communication, you can use this four-step process. Hopefully you've learned something, and hopefully it'll help you in your business, in your work life, your personal life. If you're enjoying this podcast, please let other people know. Feel free to like. We're on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, all the usual places, as well as posting these on YouTube. If you have questions or particular topics you want me to address, feel free to hit me up in the comments. Have a great day and have fun setting those boundaries.